Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk speaking. Now, first of all, thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Now, I am very excited to let you know that the podcast is now available on Amazon Alexa. You know the drill. Simply say, Alexa, play Public Relations Review Podcast, and she'll take it from there. And again, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy the program, please become a subscriber. Now, on to the podcast.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review Podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review Podcast and to our listeners all across America and around the world. This podcast is ranked by Apple as one of the top 1% of podcasts worldwide. So I say thank you to all of our guests and listeners for making this possible. And please leave your review for the podcast. We'd certainly like to hear from you. Now, question. As most of you know by now, artificial intelligence is front and center in many cases, including visual presentations. Some are exceedingly realistic. Unfortunately, many will use fake avatars and spread misinformation. So what do you do when you find fake AI presentations? Well, my guest today can help answer that question. She is Rebecca Emery, APR, and currently serves on the board of the Maine Public Relations Council as chair of the Professional Development Committee. Now, in November 2022, when ChatGPT was released, it caused most of us to take immediate notice and try to understand how this new technology could be helpful. Well, Rebecca's fellow APRs, agency heads, and PR colleagues kept asking her, what is this new technology? Is it safe to use in my role? Is it plagiarism? Well, it was at that point that Rebecca made a career pivot and founded Seacoast AI in early 2023 to provide AI awareness, training, and advisory services to the Seacoast area of New Hampshire and southern Maine. Now, her tri-state consultancy helps individuals, executives, and small to medium-sized businesses embrace and harness AI technology's power for business acceleration. So let me now welcome Rebecca Emery to the podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me today, Peter. I appreciate it.
Well, let's just ask the first question. Just how pervasive is fake artificial intelligence, and how can we begin to recognize and combat misinformation?
You bet. So we're seeing that AI is essentially everywhere. It's on our cell phones, it's in our computers. We have the ability to talk to the smartest supercomputer of the world in natural language, and why wouldn't? But the bad actors also have access to this technology. I've seen estimates, Peter, as high as $1 trillion that the global cost from everything from misinformation and disinformation and phishing scams could exceed $1 trillion by the end of this year. But when it comes to AI deepfakes and misinformation and disinformation, we saw about 500,000 deepfakes were shared globally last year. And that number is expected to reach about 8 million by the end of this year and double every 6 months thereafter. Now, you ask yourself, how did we get here? And the interesting thing is this. The AI technologies are becoming more and more sophisticated to the point where it's very difficult to recognize whether an AI deepfake is indeed a fake, unless contextually it's sort of obvious. But understand from a dollars and cents perspective that a person who would make a weaponized deepfake, they could reach about 100,000 social users for about 7 cents. But the cost to try dozens of these AI tools, these image generators and voice cloning technologies, those are free. So there's a real problem with the dollars and cents here, in the sense that all of these technologies, many of them are available in free basic capabilities, limited capabilities, and it only costs a few cents to weaponize what's made with them. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to continue to see this grow over the coming years, because unfortunately, as much as AI has lots of good capabilities and positive benefits, the bad actors also have access to it.
Mm-hmm. Just for contextual purposes, this conversation between you and I started a while back when you showed me a video of, I believe it was someone in Ukraine speaking for the government.
Correct.
It was a real person. Tell me a bit about that, and then we can go from that into more of real and fake AI presentations.
You bet, Peter. So I think what you and I spoke about a while ago was that the Ukraine government, basically the Ukraine Ministry of Foreign Affairs, created a new AI avatar called Victoria Shi, SHI. And she was based on a known personality, very relatable, I think, to the local people there. But understand that AI can translate into multiple languages in real time. And here's a country that is in a wartime situation. They can't exactly call a press conference and say, we're going to bring all of our top ministry officials and consular officials together, and we're all going to be in this location at this time. I mean, that's just not practical in a wartime setting. So they created an AI avatar. Her name is Victoria Shi. And the idea is that the consular will be able to put out messages with operational and verified consular information. They'll be able to do this on the ministry's official website and social media channels. And they can also broadcast information on emergency situations and other news. And on one hand, we think about AI, and there's a contrast here, right? Because we would expect our government to give us authentic information and from a human being. But in this case, by using an AI avatar and by using a QR code that allows you to go back to the official statement, they're able to provide very timely updates. It doesn't take the officials away from their official business. But using an AI avatar also ensures that there are no missteps or on-camera slip-ups, right? When the cameras are rolling, we often choose words that we go back later and think, gosh, I wish I hadn't said it that way. Mm-hmm. But using an AI avatar allows the ministry to put out an official public statement. The avatar can deliver it. The avatar can deliver it in multiple languages and from anywhere at any time. So, I think there's some really positive benefits to something like that. However, it also sets them up for possible manipulation. It would be very easy, perhaps, to clone that avatar and put out what sounds like seemingly official statements. So we haven't quite seen all of this play out yet. There's a city in Japan that did a similar thing where they cloned their mayor so that this clone could then deliver timely messages in multiple languages. So I think we're starting to see AI come into the communications role in terms of its ability to deliver messages, timely messages in different languages. But I think the jury's still out in terms of whether this is going to be successful for them or not, but it's certainly a bold move forward.
Well, I think it's a good idea to let people know that it also has other uses, because I would imagine some commercial firms can bring AI up to answer some basic questions, or maybe a wide range of questions based on whatever the inventory or programs or services or products that they offer, that it at least let the caller see that someone is responding to them or can respond to them in a reasonably intelligent fashion.
Correct. And we know that AI needs a lot of data, and so companies have a lot of data. And so for them to be able to extend that into a more natural, relatable form in the form of an avatar that can speak their language, it's definitely the step forward that we're seeing in terms of AI use for communication.
Well, it certainly has some benefits, because one of the nice things that I like about it is that an individual, an actual person, can become an avatar with the technology. I've done it myself here on some of the software we have that load my photograph up there, and it does whatever it needs to do, and then I just add some words to it, and I can see myself speaking. It might not be the correct voice, but the fact there I am saying what I wrote. So companies can perhaps do the very, very same thing, and it adds a bit more, I guess, friendly outreach to customers rather than just maybe typing something into a computer and having a few words come back to you.
It does. It adds a level of, I think, dimensionality. And it may be to the point where you could choose to see an avatar that you most relate to. So you might be able to choose from multiple avatars, meaning you, the viewer, and then have that avatar provide you with those messages or that information in that relatable format. I mean, some of the avatars, they're still a little clunky. The mouth movements are still that. Even Victoria Shi, her shoulder and head was a little robotic. And of course, part of that is the transparency around using an AI avatar. But as the technology gets more sophisticated, I believe these avatars will become more and more realistic. We see them a lot with onboarding at new companies. So new employees might get onboarding video that has an avatar in the corner that walks them through it. And we see that with presenters that, you know, you're used to sort of looking for that person in small format as they're speaking, but the use of avatars for that and being able to choose different languages simultaneously and say, well, I speak this language, so I'd like to receive that message. To be able to do that in real time is pretty powerful. And again, AI needs all of that data, so it's a logical extension for AI in terms of being able to present a company's data in that more relatable format.
Let's get back to those the shifty, underhanded people now, because
bad actors, yes.
The bad actors, they're there, and I guess we need to maybe help people understand how they can identify some bad actors, or at least begin to ask some questions. Is that information accurate? Yes, I saw it on the TV or on my computer. It came from an avatar. How can I go about determining if it's accurate or not? Let's help them understand the processes that they need to go through to get that done.
Absolutely, Peter. I think it's important for communicators to first understand that when they see an image or a video or hear audio and they're not quite certain that it's real, we want to be able to evaluate and analyze and assess that threat. And so first we want to use tools to investigate. Is this a deepfake? Is it a cheap fake? Is this coming from humans and trolls, or is this coming from digital bots? Those are is this disinformation or misinformation? Both of those, all of those have different distinctions, and as a result, they will inform what we do and how we respond and whether we publicly respond or not. But from a first step, if you see something that appears to be digital deception of some format, the very first thing you can do is simply do a reverse lookup on Google. It's a powerful tool, and you can simply go into the Google search bar and click on that little, looks like a little camera, I believe, and it's called Google Lens. So you can put an image in there, you could put a social media post, anything, and it will start to look up whether indeed that is digitally altered. There are more sophisticated tools. I like Hive Moderation is one of them, HIVE. I think that's really an excellent tool for both image and then multimodal, so audio and video. And it uses multiple models to detect. And then, of course, you know, if we're talking about content, there's ways you can look in Snopes and RumorGuard and Reddit and other locations to see whether this is a known scam. But if you're really unsure, go to AI. You can ask ChatGPT to analyze an image, and it will give you a pretty good idea as to whether something has the digital footprint, if you will, that might signal that it was altered in some way.
You know, hold on a second. That was interesting. You said that ChatGPT can help. Well, explain that a little bit more. First time I'm hearing of something like that.
Well, I mean, AI can recognize AI signatures.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, and ChatGPT is a very powerful model, and it's multimodal. So you can upload handwritten notes, and it will immediately put them into logical form. You can upload an image and ask it for a caption or to describe the image and give you a Midjourney prompt. But we can also put an image. For example, a social media person maybe wasn't at an event that they're being depicted at. You could put that into ChatGPT and say, does this appear to be digitally altered? And it will at least analyze it for you and give you an idea as to whether it thinks it is. I think Hive Moderation is a better tool for that because it uses multiple models and cross-checks them. So, and then there are lots of other tools that can check for plagiarism detection and Grammarly and Quillbot and so forth. But yes, you can start by just going to any one of the AI chatbots, putting an image in and saying, hey, does this appear to have been altered at all? And some of these will actually go back and show you the history. So if you go to a tool called TinEye, which is T-I-N and then E-Y-E, it will actually show you all of the impressions of that image throughout history. So if it's something that is going viral in the moment, and there are, let's say, 100 impressions of it out there, it will show you each one as it finds them, and then you can go back and trace back to the very first one. And this is what helps us be sort of AI detectives. You want to try and find the origin of misinformation or disinformation and understand, is it being weaponized against you or the brand you represent, or is it in part of a larger cause? And then you want to find out if this is going back to humans or whether this is going back to a bot farm where multiple, maybe 100 cell phones are all being controlled by one master computer. So it helps to go back, I think, and trace and then verify when you suspect digital deception.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just say right now, that is a spectacular amount of information that you provided to our audience. How to detect fake, if you will, or the bad players in terms of AI presentations. I hadn't heard this before, and I'm taking notes on this. And I think it's huge information that our listeners can certainly benefit from. And well, let me say this now: I'm certainly going to be promoting this episode with some of my AI videos that I do produce for these things to let folks know just how important this is.
Absolutely. And, there's a method that's taught in universities and used by journalists. It's called the SIFT method. Stop, investigate the source, find better coverage, and trace claims to their original context. So if you suspect that there is some kind of altered article out there or whatever, you can really just take a minute and try and investigate that source and trace it back to their original context, especially if it's a cheap fake or an altered. So the context and the image may be real, but part of it was altered. At least if you can go back and find the original real reference, then you can put them side by side and say, this is AI manipulated, or this has been digitally altered.
Mm-hmm. Now, and I know you do quite a bit of speaking, but in terms of the topic, do you find, I guess the best question is, are most of your topics about the fake AIs, or just whether they land for your speaking engagements?
Most of the time I'm educating and providing awareness and demystifying AI. What is it? What is it not? And what can it do for us? And what should we never do with it? And what are those best practices and guidelines for responsible and ethical use? But as part of that, being a public relations career professional myself, I talk to a lot of marketing communications group. I talk to public relations groups, and part of what we talk about is the reputation management piece, which is the rise of deepfakes that are being weaponized against corporations for money and weaponized against people for money and to disparage them perhaps out in the public. And so this topic comes into that discussion, but very often I'm talking about the fun stuff. How do we use it? How do we use it for content creation and ideation and SEO and so forth? But it's also very important to me to make sure I educate others on how to start spotting misinformation and disinformation. You have to practice. You have to start to understand how to recognize the signs when we suspect digital deception is at play. And I have some frameworks around that. So I do teach whole groups, whole teams about AI, deepfakes, and reputation management.
Well, let me say that right now. Hey, you all haven't just mentioned, how to detect things. Let me say that to our listeners right now that Rebecca has developed a free, I want to repeat, free 20-page digital guide that includes links to AI tools, best practices, and tips for spotting misinformation. And it's available free on her website at Seacoast, that's SEA, SeacoastAI.com. Want to make sure we got that in because, as I said, I was fascinated as you talked about how we can go about, or others can go about detecting fake AI presentations, because that's going to be huge today and in the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm building out a resource guide around this, because if you suspect digital deception and you have to make a public statement about it, how do you analyze the threat? And you can use AI to really make that process go much quicker as well. AI is excellent at analyzing situations and giving you guidance on next steps and so forth. I was training a group of amazing communicators this week, and I showed them how to use Claude to create an artifact. And it was a decision tree, and based on a certain scenario, at what point should we consider making a public statement about this? Mm-hmm. And it steps us through sort of a yes, no. If it's going to cause us harm, then perhaps, yes, we should make a public statement and so forth. And then I asked Claude AI to turn it into a little Quizlet. And all of a sudden now you have this little snippet of code that looks like a quiz and can step you through all the different scenarios until you get to the answer you need, which is it time to put out a public statement, or should we just create a holding statement and continue to research and investigate what is happening?
Well, it seems to me that you're doing a lot of work for a lot of people to help them, one, become more efficient in the use of AI, but also, just as important, detecting the unsavory players that are out there.
We have to improve our skills. And we saw a little bit of this, Peter, earlier in the year when the royal family was trying to provide Kate with some personal space. She was dealing with a personal matter, and the world's, influencers and followers and interested people were asking for an update. And unfortunately, the royals made a bit of a public relations mistake when they put out an altered photograph. Mm-hmm. And although the photograph in parts were real, that was the family, they were together, there were also parts of that photograph that were clearly altered. And that's what we'd consider misinformation, right? The part of it is real, but somehow it's been altered. And I think that caused the world then to get into a bigger panic because they felt like they were being deceived. And so when you look at breaking something like that down, I use a simple framework, an ABC framework, which is actors, behavior, and content. And when I mean content, I even mean context and contours. So you first want to look at what's happening and with the person and the behavior, and you want to think about, does this seem far-fetched for this person? Is Tom Hanks really trying to promote a dental plan? No. Is Taylor Swift going to be giving away 3,000 sets of Le Creuset? All you have to do is sign up and give your credit card? No. If she's going to do any kind of promotion, she's going to do it, to the nth degree. It's going to be a big coordinated promotion, and it will be spectacular and fabulous. And that was not. And you could clearly see that the images were altered, the deepfake was altered, but unfortunately people were scammed by it and gave their information. So when you're looking at what could be a scam, you have to think about the actors and the behavior. Does this make sense? Is there some kind of opportunity or intent to exploit or harm others? A big indicator is the sense of urgency. Call now, put in your credit card now, we need money now. Or someone might call and try and do a ransom play, and, mm-hmm. and you need to upload a Walmart card now, right? That sense of urgency should be a big red flag for all of us. And then when we look at the content, you want to think about not only the content, but the context and the contours. Very often AI, the avatar technology, the voice swapping and so forth, they don't quite get all the edge details right. So I always encourage people to look around the contours of the image itself, around the edges, but also around the edges of people's faces, their nose, their mouth, their teeth, their hair, their hands. Those are areas that AI still at times struggles with, and those can be very helpful indicators that something is amiss. So ABC, actors, behavior, and content.
Well, Rebecca, you've provided some exceptional information for our listeners here today. Is there anything you think we have missed?
I think that there is a lot to this, but I encourage communications professionals and public relations professionals, if you worry about possible weaponized AI deepfake or misinformation or disinformation, it helps to start educating yourself. What are the differences between those things? What are the differences between deepfakes and cheapfakes and trolls and bots? Because all of that, and how do you assess the impact? And then you better have your links ready. So for example, where do we go to report and remove content, right? There's Google takedown, there's Bing, there's Facebook, all the different platforms have takedown pages. Build a list of those and have those ready. We need to make sure that we might have to refer to law enforcement if we're at a school and this deals with minors, right? We want to make sure we have a good monitoring tool in place, whether that's something like, Sprout Social or whatever. You want to make sure then you can start to continue to monitor. And then you have to really think about your response and what that might look like. So there's a lot to it, and I enjoy educating others and really breaking it down, because if you think about it, all those platforms, they reward engagement. And in some cases, you do want to respond, but in other cases, you don't want to fuel that engagement because it's only going to make the misinformation or disinformation go even further in those platforms. There's a lot to it.
Well, let me say that you have provided an awful lot of information. Now, can our listeners get in touch with you by way of your website?
Yes. There's a contact form right on my website. It's seacoastai.com.
Okay, and let me repeat that again and write this down, listeners, because I think there's a lot of information here that you might want to get back to. And her website again is Seacoast, that's S-E-A, seacoastai.com. My guest today has been Rebecca Emery, an APR with Seacoast AI, and being quite honest about it, has provided some exceptional information on AI, legitimate and illegitimate today, that I think that we can all benefit from. So Rebecca, I am so happy we've had a chance to have this conversation, and I'm sure our listeners are going to benefit from it.
Me too, Peter. I really appreciate it, and I just encourage everyone to just increase your awareness about AI, be on the lookout for digital deception, and know what to do when that starts to rear its ugly head, because unfortunately, AI deepfakes are on the rise. AI technology is here to stay. And so this is part of the new reality for us as communicators and PR professionals.
Well, good. Thank you so very much for taking time to be on the Public Relations Review podcast. And, based on what we've talked about today, I think we might have to find another way to get you on this show about some other related topic in the near future, if you'll be willing to come on and share it with us.
Happy to do that, Peter. Anytime. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and I think that there's so much that's happening on this, and AI is evolving so rapidly before our eyes that this is going to be an ongoing discussion point for sure.
Great. Well, as I said, my guest today has been Rebecca Emery, an APR, who heads Seacoast AI, located Seacoast AI, and you get to her at seacoastai.com. Rebecca, thank you again so much. And to my listeners, thank you. We certainly would like to get a review from you. And, of course, share this episode with all of your friends. And be sure to tune in to the next edition of the Public Relations Review podcast.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk. First, let me say thank you so much for being a listener. Now, I want to alert you to our shiny new podcast website located at podpage.com. However, you can go directly to the podcast site located at publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. There, you can contact me through email. You can leave a voice message. You can leave a review. You can read an episode blog and frequently learn about the podcast guests. You might also want to suggest podcast topic ideas or even suggest a guest. You can also let me know if you would like to receive our podcast listener logo that you can post on your social media. So I look forward to hearing from you about our new podcast website. Thank you so much for listening to the Public Relations Review podcast, and have a great day.